Now, The Morning Drive.
It's a game changer.
SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
18 after the hour, we are back on The Morning Drive. Jeff Gordon with us until 10 a.m. in the East. We teased this a moment ago, Jeff, that we're going to talk current events. Well, there are a couple of current events we'd like to take your temperature on.
All right.
And one of those involves the appeal process.
Oh, boy, here we go. I didn't know if you're going to open with this or we're going to get 30 minutes in.
Thought we'd ease into it.
We're just easing into it. Because we have a couple of questions based on the conversations that we've had here and what we've heard from fans and listeners. Number one, when your appeal was heard, were you in the room when it happened?
I was, yeah. Rick Hendrick and myself were the primary individuals representing Hendrick Motorsports, and then you have your list of witnesses that you bring in, and NASCAR does a kind of a similar thing on their side.
I'm not going to beat around the bush. I would just love to know why you feel you got all of your points back and Kaulig only got 25% of theirs back.
Yeah, I cannot speak on Kaulig's because I wasn't in the room and I don't know all the details. I do know they had a different appeal panel, right? So which is really interesting. First thing I want to say about appeals is that I wish there was more transparency. There has to be, and I think I've seen where NASCAR is trying to make some moves, to work in that direction. But this day and age, with so much information that we're tapped into on a regular basis, you cannot have this kind of a process with the results that come out as public as they do and have so little information tied to it. So I'm all for more transparency as it relates to that. I'll share as much as I feel like I can share because I do want to respect at least the process that's put in place now, because I do like the appeal process. I don't know that NASCAR does, but I think that we do, because I think there are times when it needs to be heard, and so in our case, first of all I think that there was just a lot of confusion, misinformation that was going on within the teams, within NASCAR, within the OEMs. There was just a lot that was going on around that particular Phoenix race, because last year at the end of the year, all the OEMs had an opportunity to resubmit a new front, hood and fenders and nose, and the louvers were a part of that. And so NASCAR did all these parity tests. And so while they're doing the parity tests, then all of a sudden, a little bit later than that, came, hey, we're going to, and this came pretty late, right, in either December, January, where it was, we're going to go to a low downforce package for the short tracks, for the road courses. And so there was a lot of testing going on there, as well as the parity testing. So then they had to get back in there and say, okay, now with the low downforce, what do we have? Well, so the louvers were a big topic because, Chevrolet last year, sometimes they ran louvers, sometimes they didn't, because we had a lot of heating and cooling issues with the Chevrolet moving air through there. And so NASCAR said, no, we want everybody, every race to run louvers at every event, so let's resubmit that part of the car. So we did that, and so when that process takes place, there is a CAD file design that gets put into, let's say, a 3D printed piece. That goes in there. They do all the wind tunnel testing. NASCAR's there, the OEM's there, everybody does the check off, boom, 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 we're good. And then that goes to a manufacturer, and that manufacturer delivers that part to a distributor that then goes straight from the distributor. NASCAR never sees that piece, by the way. Like when it comes to the distributor, it goes straight to the distributor, straight to the teams. And so when they started getting delivered, these parts were very inconsistent. They were not met up to the design. And there were a lot of discussions with NASCAR, with the OEMs, talking about how do we get these parts and pieces to nominal, which is to the CAD file and drawing. And there were discussions about, we're going to allow the teams to clean this up. And then we're like, oh, but we're not going to clean it up, at this time. We're going to wait and do it here. Well, also, if you go back to 2022, There was a very similar thing on the louvers last year, and I don't know if it was all OEMs or just Chevrolet, but there was this very same piece that the manufacturing tool was just not able to get 100% to the drawing and to the design, and so NASCAR allowed teams with very little communication to clean that piece up. All 2022, those louvers showed up and were fine, and so we, kind of probably took too many liberties, meaning we at Hendrick Motorsports, with everything that was going on, everything around that particular race, as well as what had happened in the wind tunnel, communications going back and forth, where we showed up with all of our louvers cleaned up the way that we thought everybody was going to show up there. And that was on us. That was a communicational error, mistake that we made. And we recognized it. We told NASCAR that right away. They took the piece off. The piece never raced on the car, or never went in qualifying or anything else. But I think what was so disappointing to us is that I think that could have been handled very much like the wheels did in Daytona. The previous year. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on all this, but a very similar thing occurred with the design change that was coming. NASCAR is working through the issues of the wheel design and the tolerances and opening that up, and everybody knew that, but it was not submitted. It wasn't ready to happen at that time, yet teams showed up that way. And they just said, no, that's wrong. We're not going to do that now. We're going to wait until, down the road when we get all the tooling and measurement, wait to do it. But they didn't penalize those teams, not one bit, didn't do one single thing. And I just felt like, with all the information that we and the facts that we had, I felt like this could have been handled very much like that. So going back to your original question, Mike, I think the reason why the appeal committee took the points back is because we laid that out very clearly to them of the confusion, and they felt like, okay, you modified a part, and so for that, we're going to stick with a form of the penalty, but we understand the miscommunication, and so that's the way I feel. That you don't really know, you don't talk to them, you don't go and say, hey, how come you didn't give us this, but you gave us that? You don't have that kind of conversation once it's all over.
All right, so in the wake of all this, as you know, the NASCAR's changed some things in terms of, one, they can now put out publicly what the appeals panel finds. So to your point, transparency, some of that's there, that's good. But now the appeals board cannot just take away any part of the punishment going forward. They can modify, they can tweak, but they can't take away. Is that the right way to go? How do you feel about those changes, Jeff?
I could not disagree any further with this taking place a week or two after our appeal. I just, that makes no sense to me. Like, you set your rules and you go into the season and you get through the season. At the end of the season, if you feel like you need to change something, then you relook at it and you change it. I think that's a bad look. I just, the lack of transparency, I think that went on far too long. I think that's the right move to make, because when they, kind of at the end of it, tell you the decisions, there is a lot more detail that they give that never goes out to the public. So, that's why you saw some of the statements that NASCAR made versus the statement that Hendrick made, right? Because you're trying to respect the process, but at the same time, there's information there that needs to be out there, but for some reason, the process isn't wanting to allow that out there. So I agree with that part, but I don't agree with, this didn't go the way that we think it should go. Let's go ahead and change it now in the middle or early in the season. That to me is not a good look.
There is one other matter of current events that I wanted to get your take on, and I saw some comments from you last week. We heard that there was a team owners meeting and a NASCAR meeting that did not happen for whatever reasons. The two parties did not get together, and we hear comments like the parties can't be further apart, the team owners, NASCAR, not seeing eye to eye on matters right now. For the listener that's new to this and doesn't understand what's going on, they just see the headlines. You get the clickbait and all that and all the dramatic headlines. What is the issue right now that is between the owners and the sanctioning body? Can you give us a little 101 just so everybody knows what's happening with this?
Yeah, I'll give you, I think, as much as I possibly can. First of all, I think that was blown out of proportion. The team owner council meetings are informative. They're not mandatory by owners and representatives attending. A lot of times it's just kind of, I would say 90% of the information we could get in a deck and information that, we have readily available, or discussions that are ongoing behind the scenes or in other committees. So, I wouldn't say that there's been, from the owner standpoint, this huge demand of, can't wait to get the team owner council meeting because, all this new information that we're going to gather. So I think that what happened was, knowing that the number one thing that is on the team's minds right now is what's happening with the economics of and the business model of the team ownership, and those discussions happening with NASCAR, and they've been happening with NASCAR for the last year and a half, that we wanted that to really be kind of at the top of the priority list for that meeting, which was not on the agenda, and so Hendrick Motorsports, we made the decision that we were not going to attend it. It was not something where teams all got together and said, "Hey, let's not show up." It was a decision made by each team, probably after a list of other owners said, "Yeah, I don't think we're going to show up." Either we don't really feel like there's a lot of information there that is necessary that we can't already get in other ways. And if we're not going to talk about the most important thing on our minds right now, which is talking about the sustainability of the race teams, and it's not just talking about TV revenue. It's a lot of other things too. It's how can we work better together to grow the sport? How can we work better to share our rights? How can we find ways to cut costs, but we got to do it together, right? You can't just, we want a seat at the table as well on decision making. You can't make a decision in January about upcoming rules when everything's been set in place since September, October the year before, because that costs the teams a tremendous amount of money. Any change costs a lot of money, even if it's good for the sport. But it has to be thought out, it has to be planned out, and so there's a lot of things on the table that the teams are really wanting to have deeper discussions with NASCAR and solve this, and so that's kind of what led to what happened last week.
The follow-up then, I guess, is where are these negotiations going? Is there a timetable where you as owners would like to have something come to an agreement? And the charter system seems to be something, based on the reports we've read, that is a focal point here. Where is all this stuff in your mind right now, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're going to be able to ever solve 100% of some of the economics. We don't know what the new TV deal is going to bring, right? We want to really lock arms with NASCAR and see them put together and negotiate the best deal that they possibly can that benefits all of us and benefits the fans too, and the tracks and everybody. It's just right now we're looking at it as the way that we can solve for that and have something that is a value that we can continue to invest in is to. I don't think we're ever going to be a true league. I don't know, if we're ever going to be a true franchise. But we have these charters that we've seen go up in value. I don't think they're anywhere close to what, if you look at a true investment, what it costs every year to operate your team. I still don't think they're where they need to be. Certainly not from Hendrick Motorsports' standpoint of the investment that Rick Hendrick has made over the last 39 years. But I do think that having these charters have more permanency to them that you can reinvest in because it has long-term value. I think that that's very, very high on the list of the race teams.
More coming up with Jeff Gordon as we continue here on TMD.